Okay, so welcome to tonight's Agile Coaching Exchange. It's good to see so many of you here this evening, giving up your nice and sunny, bright day to come and spend a little time learning all about LeSS. So tonight we are joined by Rickard Jones, who works for a company called Agile Affinity. Interesting fact, that's who I also work with now. And he's got oodles of experience. So as long as I remember, he's been working out in the industry, agile coaching, training. He's a certified Scrum Master, a less friendly trainer who's here in his remit tonight to tell us all about less. But there's absolutely so much experience that Rick brings to the table. He's worked in some very, very big banking giants. And so hopefully he's going to share his experiences this evening with less. Over to you, Rickard.
Okay, thanks for that, Helen. I shall now share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. And so the title of today's talk is More with Less, Descaling over Scaling. There will be a little interaction within the talk, but nothing too taxing. So what is less all about? Well, based on years of experience and lots of pain, the main understanding about scaling is this that I've found. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Often when I show this, people think this is a joke because I show it on my LeSS course, but later we find out, no, it's actually what you should do. But now some more ancient history. That is, back before the Agile Manifesto was created, each of the participants, and some didn't turn up, had to submit an abstract, and this is part of that abstract that Alistair Cockburn submitted. He said, I'm interested in fending off the fat methodology armory, the vast quantity of Rupp, Anderson, SE1, I think, or I, etc. salespeople putting ideas into CIOs' minds that they should have lots of paperwork to be safe, countering that I want a turnkey methodology, one that works straight out of the box mentality. So he wants to stop that. These are two battles I could use help in. This was part of the whole Agile movement, is to stop this one solution, one fits all wonder idea. So that was part of that history. You can look that up. But what is less? Well, you may have seen many articles on the internet comparing less with other approaches. Often they'll talk about the less frameworks, and they'll show the first framework, which is called the less framework from 2 to 8 teams. And then they'll claim this is less, and then they'll use the less framework to compare to all the other approaches. This is not less. Then they will also bring in the second framework and start comparing again. Both are still not less. See, you've got to be careful about those articles and those bloggers and those people doing LinkedIn, this, that, and the other all over the place, comparing this approach to less and then only looking at the frameworks. Their baseline of what less actually is as a definition is totally wrong. This is not less. They have misunderstood. So let's get you the less definition. The actual, what the heck is it? So less is an organizational system for product development aimed at maximizing an organization's adaptiveness. So it's all about agility and maximizing that agility. And with adaptiveness or agility, the original intent of agile development, we mean optimizing towards ability to change direction with relatively low cost, primarily based on discovery through frequent delivery for maximizing value delivered to customers and end users. So less is an organizational system that's all about maximizing agility for maximizing value in turn. Right? It's not about adhering to a framework or an approach. Yeah, the source is from Why Less on the LeSS website. And when they say we, they mean the creators of LeSS, Craig Larman and Bas Oddi. If you don't like that definition, then there's the less complete picture, which actually gives you a visualization on what less is. Yeah. This is why I find it strange when bloggers and so on compare less to the other approaches and then don't actually use this visualization, because this is the one. It is the less complete picture. It starts from the inside out. So you actually start from the inside out with the principles and go back in again, a loop in, as you go forward with a less approach. So the principles that guide experimentation and adoption. So these principles are here. Queuing theory. Empirical process control, having a systems thinking, lean thinking, continuous improvement towards perfection, being customer centric, having a whole product focus, and trying to do more with less people, less processes, less bureaucracy, and transparency. Because less large scale Scrum is Scrum, as we'll see. There's not much difference between less and Scrum itself. That's the whole point. Now, if we continue with the less complete picture, after principles that guide experimentation and adoption, you have rules that provide a minimum core structure. You can look these rules up, they're listed, but I've done an infographic for them just for this talk. So it might not be the best infographic, but there's three main areas: the less structure, less product, and of course, less sprint. So structure and people are the teams, of course. In less, they're not called developers, they're not called development team, they're called the teams. And they are self-managing, no remote control needed, cross-functional, co-located, and they're long-lived. They live with the product. They stay with it. No dynamic reteaming at all. Scrum Masters are full-time. This is a rule in less. It's not a role. It's not optional. They work across 1 to 3 teams. And actually, as per the Scrum Guide, which is often forgotten, they have an overall organisational focus. Don't worry, when these controversial topics keep going, I will answer questions at the end. Managers can be optional in less depending on the organisation, but therefore a product group to establish the complete less structure at the start. This is vital for a less adoption. So that's what managers do. And they go and see where the work is. So their role changes from managing people to stop and fix and experiments over conformance. So they are looking towards actually making the system better. For a larger organisation beyond the product group, you adopt less evolutionary using a go and see, so incrementally as we go along, where experimentation improvement is the norm. What is meant by product group is essentially all the people working on the direct product. Yeah? So you start with that, first of all, when you're doing your less adoption. When we come to less product, there is one product owner, one product backlog. There are no hierarchies of product or people or product backlogs above that one backlog. It is centralized. Therefore, you get alignment, which seems to be what organizations lust after, or the bosses do, built in already. You have your definition of done. There's one whole common DOD for the whole product. But in addition, you can have team-specific definitions of done that build upon that if you need it. But the target is a goal is a shippable product every sprint, just like Scrum. There's no difference there between Scrum, really, and you could do that in Scrum. Product backlog refinement. It's the same as Scrum: stakeholders, diverse groups, teams, product owner, clarification between the teams and the stakeholders. Sometimes they call it multi-product backlog refinement, multi-team product backlog refinement, but that to me is the same as Scrum. A common misunderstanding with Scrum is it's one team. That's not the case. If you read the Scrum Guide, it says multiple teams a few times. The less sprint. So there is an integrated whole product and one sprint. What that means is many teams do not have separate sprints. There is only one sprint that they're all in together to build that product. Therefore, by default, they are already aligned. And once again, that if you don't have that, then I would argue you are misaligned because you're constantly trying to have to align the teams. A common misunderstanding with less is that sprint planning is two parts, or two different sprint plans, sprint planning 1 and 2. That's not the case. There's one sprint planning. It just has parts 1 and 2. If you want to combine those together, they would say that was great. In sprint planning, the product owner and the teams come together, selection of items and exploration opportunities to collaborate is done. So we do that. Then the team decides how to create what the product, and the actual sprint planning for the sprint backlog is created. And this can be done with multiple teams together or one team on their own, but the recommendation is they all do that together. So you could combine these into one event, or you could decide to separate them, just like Scrum. What is individualistic is the teams have their own daily scrums and they have their own sprint backlog. right? Just so they can focus on their work. But there is one sprint and there is one sprint goal still, just like Scrum. No different. No different. Multi-team product backlog refinement and sprint review, they're all common. Teams have individual retrospectives because they might get upset with one of the other teams, of course. Yeah. And there is an overall retrospective, which is an extra event, right, where teams feed into that and whoever represents there is rotated. It's not the Scrum Master every time or the team lead. I should also say that multi-team product backlog refinement is an event in LeSS as well. You can do it ongoing, but it is a specific event. So those are different in the rules. But the biggest rule is one product owner, one product backlog. No hierarchies above it. Yeah? Okay, just to be clear. So those are rules. Then we have guides. Guides highlight widely useful practices and that clarify what an organisation can expect when adopting the rules. So outside coming back in again. And you'll see a guide tip here, which I often use to show if they're guides. So let's look at LeSS coordination. How would you do that as a guide tip? Well, there's many ways to do that. The best way to coordinate between teams is not to have a person do it between them, but get the teams to actually talk to each other. They have to do that anyway. Or open space. Open space is one technique where you put forward ideas and people come and decide if they're interested in your idea and ask questions. Then there's the traveller. The traveller will travel with a team for a sprint to impart their knowledge, or maybe more than one sprint, but not halfway through, not a percentage for a whole sprint. And when they travel, let me be clear, they're not doing the work for them. This isn't like some pooled resource, as project management would say. No. Their idea, when they come into that team, is to upskill the people so that they can go back to their team, because they will be in a team themselves. The traveller. Then there's the scout. The scout goes and sees what other teams are doing and then reports back to their team. Not the team lead, not the graduate. It could be anyone rotating. People can communicate in code with clean code, as we know. Coordinate that way. And coordinate with communities of practice, not centres of excellence, but communities of practice. So there's many ways to do coordination. But the main point about coordination is the teams, the devs, they're coordinating with each other. There is not some mystical person doing scrum of scrums or ferreting around after them. They are working together and collaborating together as agile teams should do. So this brings us to experiments that share context-specific knowledge and an experimental mindset to own your way of working and try things out. As I said before, this is what LeSS is. It's this. Or that previous definition. It's not the frameworks people don't understand. I don't know why they keep doing that. Probably because that's just an easier way for them to make comparisons. So there are some differences between the LeSS approach to Scrum and the actual Scrum guide. So we go through those specific differences. So the larger changes are they've reintroduced product instead of work for a complex problem. So they're more product focused in the LeSS Scrum guide, which is their version of Scrum. They've removed the Scrum team concept. So now there's the Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Team or Teams. They've renamed developers to Team. They've removed Sprint out of events and made it a separate thing. So it's a separate thing, its own separate concept. They've renamed Product Goal to Product Vision. So now there isn't a product goal, it's called Product Vision. So they've actually, I would argue that's already in Scrum and you just add it on, but they've actually removed product goals. They've removed creating and communicating product backlog items from backlog management in the product owner section. So everyone should be doing that, not just the product owner. They've removed the topic 1, 2, 3 terminology and called it why, what, how. I'm not sure that's a large change because that's what Scrum Guide calls it anyway. They've added product backlog refinement to Scrum events, yet mentioned that it can be done as an activity rather than an event. So they've added that as the 5th event, really. Which is how most teams do it, but you need it for multiple teams, which is what we're talking about when we're scaling multiple teams working together to make sure they are all fully aligned. They've removed the language of commitment to artifacts because it's just confusing, and moved sprint goal in one place and put that inside sprint planning because it used to be all over the place in the Scrum Guide. And they've introduced definition of done, but not as a commitment, but as an agreement that we agree to together. So their argument is that this is a combination of the 2017 and 2020 version of the Scrum Guide, and this is the best of those versions of Scrum Guide, and that's what they've created. And the 2020 version is a regression of what we're trying to do. Not a major one, but a slight one. That would be their argument. Yeah. You can do this because the Scrum Guide is open source, and if you look at the LeSS Scrum Guide, they give them full credits and full acknowledgement, so fair enough. But these are the larger differences. So why do less? That's what it is. Why do it? Well, the whole point of less is to have a whole product focus. Maintaining a constant whole product focus is critical in less, as customers don't buy part of the product, but the whole product. People don't buy often, they used to, Word and Excel separately. Now they buy Office. But what is Office? Office is Office document collaboration or document collaboration. That is what they buy. So they need all of those so-called old products like PowerPoint, Excel and Word to actually work together to do document collaboration. Right, so they buy a whole product focus. And if they don't do that, Google are giving it away from free, so they have to do it. Right, so I'm going to play a video now. And then I'm going to ask you some questions about the video, or a question. Hopefully the video will play. Okay, right. So my question to you is, there's a bit of a problem in this approach, and I'll show you why. It's not that it's inherently wrong. It's just that if you have this type of system where 38 weeks of waiting happen, and you go in and fix this part, and you've reduced your cost of delay, awesome. But the problem is you haven't actually fixed what's causing your cost of delay. What's the chronic affliction of this system? Not the instance where it happens, but the system. Because you see, it could happen here again, and here again, and now you've got to fix that one, and that one, and that one, and so on. We're playing whack-a-mole, I'm told, is the game. Playing whack-a-mole. Also, if you've got somewhere else in the system where you've got a cost of delay and you start fixing those, we're off again. Because you're not fixing the chronic affliction. What I find it interesting about this video is they actually say what the real problem is. And not only that, it's on the screen right now. So can you tell me, what is the real problem? What is the chronic affliction, the source of their cost of delay in this system that keeps happening? Not the specific instance, but it keeps happening.
The
Can you
waiting
tell
time?
me? Nope. That's the result of it. What keeps causing that to happen?
Or the fact that it's handoffs between teams?
No, they could fix that. It's on the screen right now. They mentioned it as the problem, and then they quickly move on.
Is it blind to queues?
That's it. The managers are blind to the cues. Can't fix it if you don't see it. It's an adage old problem and well known. So, in this video, they argue that the cost of delay is the one thing you should be managing above all. But I disagree. Right? I showed this video to show you the problem, how it's widespread in the industry, how people will come up with all these varied, wonderful ways of fixing their real problem. But a real problem is you should be descaling complexity. Let's look at an example of this. I'll use one of the exercises on my LeSS course to do this. So, you know, a freebie. So, here we go. We've watched our video. The managers are blind to the cues. Yeah, blind to the cues. Let's look at an agile transformation. Yes. Let's look at a classic agile transformation where they go large and they scale big. Not the LeSS way, but quite common in the industry. So, what you will often see in the industry is if I've got this right, you'll see sometimes a big boss at the top, or use a different color. There we go. Big boss at the top, like a chief product officer or CEO. Then you'll have like a product manager. And then we'll have these product owners down the bottom here. Lots of them, yes. And this is often seen as some sort of portfolio management approach. We often see this sort of approach set up, and apparently this is how you scale Agile. Now let's look at the flow of work. Let's say Chief Product Officer or CEO comes up with a fantastic idea, worth gazillions, going to save the planet. Yeah, must have it tomorrow. Farms that off, breaks it down often to their product managers, who put it in their backlog as well. And this then goes down to the product owners in their backlog. The thing is, though, is when items are split like this, the value of it changes. If this is worth 100 gazillion, it doesn't normally split 50-50. It usually splits in various different ways, like an 80-20 or whatever it is. What that could result in is in one product manager's backlog, sure, it's the top item, but in another one, well, there's more important items than that split. And even if it gets detected there, definitely when you get down to the product owner type level, it's definitely lost in here. Let's say magically it's not, but it is. But let's just say. Then we get to the team. So this product owner, right at the bottom, may be working with teams with multiple backlogs themselves. We often see that as well because they don't have one single backlog. This happens because when we look at the component teams, often you'll see in the internet some crude, rudimentary abstraction of front end, middleware, back end, and they'll talk about going from front to back. You may have seen that before, but that's actually not reality. Reality is this. When that top level item goes into this team's backlog here, yeah, they have to only do their bit on it because they're a component team. So this is probably the UX team that hands over to the front end team, that hands over to the integration team, that hands over to the middleware messaging team, that hands over to the middleware archiving team, that hands over to the back-end integration team, that hands over to the back-end team, and they skip security because everyone hates them, to the deployment team. Yeah, that's usually what happens, right? If we go through what actually happens. Right, it's not some nice, neat front to end back. It's passed on like the peace pipe. Now, if we watch the flow of work, and this goes from one team to the next. Remember, this is the most important item, according to the big boss. That also can get stuck behind everyone else's so-called more higher priority items, especially as most teams don't put value on the items they have in their backlog, not the business value. So it gets lost in all of this. Way down. Yeah. And the team at the end, they don't even know what the heck they're doing anymore and why they're doing it, just that they've got to do it for whatever reason. So you can see how it starts to get lost. But let's look at what happens in the individual teams. So when we go to the individual teams and we follow the must-have item, and it's a fragment, remember, it's been fragmented by then, it goes into their backlog. Sometimes these teams have so much work, they'll put it into a buffer zone or a pre-backlog somehow. And then it will get passed along the various stages until it gets done. But this too can get lost behind loads of other work. And as we know, when information is put in to the teams or work is asked, they might pass it on internally. They might not be entirely cross-functional. And also it can break down as they make it smaller for themselves as well. And each fragment means the true value of it is not known unless they're tracking that, which they're not. And it's very difficult to maintain. Also, don't forget, they might realise, hang on a sec, we should probably put this on our to-do list for security and get round to it sometime on the Confluence wiki. And don't forget accessibility. Right? Even if it's internal, you need to have it accessible. So that gets put behind all that stuff they never get time round to doing. Yes? And in very large organizations, well, there can be multiple component teams that hand off to each other, and off we go again. Yes, right? So you can see how it can all get lost. Yes, you can be blind to the cues because every time there's a split, and if you have more than one backlog, there will be a split. Every time there's a split, the value fragments. Every handoff, everything. It's not the handoffs, it's the value. And being able to track all of that and making sure we're working on the right thing at the right time. Now, there are other approaches who use this fantastical coordinator person who can magically coordinate all of this. They can magically work out all the splits, the value of all the splits, keep it all aligned, keep it all on time, let everyone know. And not only that, they can do it every sprint forever. This magical person, right? This magical person exists. Sometimes they're called release train engineers. Sometimes they're called senior product manager. Sometimes they're called program manager. Yes, this amazing person who can keep all of this in sync. I would argue that's fantasy. But let us suppose such a person does exist. Let us just suppose and run the scenario. And they have all the knowledge all the time of every aspect, every change, every variable that could impact the product. They have it all the time forever. Let's just say, what happens when they leave? How are you going to replace them? Yeah? I did hear of a chap who was this person. He charged $4,500 a day, and that was about 10 years ago. Even if you have such a person, you ain't going to replace them that easily. So that's high risk. That's a key person specialist. So now, let us run a scenario. Remember, this is supposed to be the agile way of scaling. Let's run a scenario. Let's say the chief product owner, they believe that, it's the right way to go, but they're just not getting enough stuff through the system, right? So what they do is they hire another product owner, right? They want to get more throughput, right? Hire another product owner, make sure that product owner only has the top stuff on their backlog, but it's still fragmented because you've got to work with the other product owners and they have to work with all the other teams and get in their backlogs as well. So now you're going to help me out. I'm going to run the scenario, right? We've increased the product owner and backlogs. Right, so we've increased the complexity. So if we increase the complexity by product owners, have we increased or decreased the number of backlogs? Has the number of backlogs gone up or has it gone down? You tell me.
If you increase the number of product owners, you shouldn't change. If you have more teams, it should change.
Well, no, we've got another backlog with that product owner. Otherwise, what are they managing?
Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
The backlogs have gone up. Right. So all of that, because every time you split something, it's a dependency. So all of that's got to be managed. Do you think the cost of delay goes up with more backlogs or down?
Up.
Okay, I'm with you, but why? I
Because
agree, but why?
Adding more steps, adding more...
Okay, so the cost of delay is likely to go up. There's no guarantees.
Mhm.
What about estimates? Do you think they're likely to go up if the backlogs and cost of delay have gone up?
What do you mean?
Well, so it takes time, even if the estimate of the work is the work, it takes time to do those estimates. The more fragments you have,
Yeah.
the more you're going to be doing estimating, aren't you?
More people means spending more time doing estimates.
Well, more things to estimate. There's literally more things in the system.
Yep.
But that's me. What else could go up, do you think? What else could go up? What else could go up? You tell me.
Number of developers, usually. Hire more people.
Might have the same number of devs. Might have the same number. Right.
Costs, possibly.
We've got cost of delay. We've already got that. But I suppose costs, yes, costs in general. So total cost of ownership. I'll give you that one. TOC. Total cost of ownership. Yep, that could go up because you've got to pay for the product owner at least. Yes. What else could go up? What about risks? In fact, let me scrap that one. What about dependencies? Because I already mentioned that. What about dependencies?
Up.
Up. Definitely. Why? I'm with you.
Because the system becomes more complex. So
our complexity has gone up, yes, because we've got more fragments, right? More fragments, more fragmented. Yeah. So if we have dependencies going up, what about risks then?
They should go up.
Why?
Because there are more things that can break.
Exactly. More complexity, more things that break. There's no guarantees, but this is the likelihood of it. So risks could go up. Yes, risks could go up. Okay, so all of this is going up because I added a product owner, right? Let's look at it a different scenario. Let's say we've got the same system, yeah, but this time instead of adding a product owner, I collapse all of these backlogs into one backlog. Yes, we've still got this one backlog because the CPO likes it, but we've got one backlog now, right? Just to run the scenario, you with me? Yes. So we've collapsed the backlog. Yeah, right. So backlogs will go down because we've reduced them. What's likely to happen with the cost of delay, up or down, when we've decreased the complexity?
Down.
Why? I'm with you.
Again, there are less steps in the process. And
according to the video, we're not blind to queues anymore because there's only one queue.
Right.
Estimates, what's happened to them? The number of estimates you do, not actually the size of them, but it could be the size of them.
Well, it's dramatically down. It's one backlog.
Yeah. Total cost of ownership, well, we don't have as many product owner, one less at least. We could have a product group. Dependencies?
Less because it's the same backlog.
Yeah. And risks?
They reduce as well.
Okay. Because we've got less dependencies, less things to go wrong. Right. So those are the difference in the approaches. Let's go back to this one. This is the industry standard I see. Why is it industry standard? Well, because I see, let's name them, the approaches that use this, zooming in. We have SAFe, of course, uses this approach. SAFe uses that approach. We also have Scrum at Scale. It's not quite the same, but you see it has multiple product owners, and with multiple product owners, you get multiple backlogs and you get increased complexity. And we're off again in this blind to queues. Spotify is actually the same. Multiple product owners again. Yeah, and so they do have that in the Spotify approach. Not that Spotify use that approach, but other people do. Also, the approach I've seen similar to that as well is flight levels, constant number of lists and so on, creates fragmentation. Because you see, this approach is a dependency factory. If you have this approach at your organization now, someone right now is creating a dependency and another one and another one and another one. And each time they do, your backlogs go up, your cost of delay goes up, your estimates go up, your total cost of ownership goes up, your dependencies go up, and your risks go up. This approach here of backlogs hierarchy, when I spoke to the SAFe people, because they invented the term, is called LPM, Lean Portfolio Management. Now, I want to be clear. Lean Portfolio Management is way bigger than this. But when I spoke to the experts in the SAFe world, and they invented that term, it doesn't come from Lean, it comes from the SAFe people. They told me you have to have this structure. Right? It's bigger than that, Lean Portfolio Management, but that's the pattern I see. And with this, you get all of this going up. And I have to ask the question, why the heck would I want that? Why the heck would I want that? Why would I want a dependency to go up? What's interesting, when I go into organizations that have this, one of the number one things they always tell me is, we've got dependencies that we need managing. And I'm like, yeah, no wonder. Someone just created another 10 while we were talking.
Is there not an issue if as the single backlog gets larger, there's more and more stakeholders related to it, so the workload for the person who's managing that backlog becomes possibly unsustainable?
More and more stakeholders, but that's the reality of the product.
Yeah,
If
but
the
you've now got
product
one
is
product owner
massive,
who's dealing with a very large number of stakeholders, probably going to
correct,
drown
yes.
in that stuff, aren't they?
No, because you assume that the product owner only talks to the stakeholders. In the LeSS approach, the devs talk to the stakeholders as
Okay.
well. Think of this. The team members are mini product owners.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the point. See, classic one, dev goes, I'm not sure if this is legal. Product owner goes off and speaks to legal. No, unless the developer gets up and goes to speak to legal, comes back to the team and goes, product owner and the team, I've spoken to legal. Legal say this, so we have to do it. Product owner goes, great, I didn't have to go and speak to legal. That's simple.
But it does sound like there's a coordination effort there to
Well,
make sure the product owner is kept informed.
Yes, it's called product backlog refinement and talking. If you remember, if we go back to the presentation, just talk, coordination, communities of practice. We have many ways to go and coordinate, but talking is number one.
Oh, absolutely. Talking is always good, but then you've got complexity here because you've got a single product owner who's got to understand what several teams are doing, their individual actions with the stakeholders.
I totally agree. And that's why we're all in sprint planning together and multi-team product backlog refinement. We're not in separate ones, so they do understand that. That's the point. This approach on the screen right now ensures that they never understand it all, which is why you have this RTE, SPM, PM type overlord coordinating it all, because no one does. But you don't need that role if the product owner is really working with all the teams and there is only one product owner. What you're saying is the actually dysfunction of the current approach. This one essentially is nothing new, bringing them all together and ensuring they stay together.
No, I'm not disagreeing with the approach. What I'm suggesting is that is putting a lot of pressure on that single product owner to maintain an understanding of what's going on.
Well, that pressure into these approaches is with the RTE and the senior product manager or whoever that coordinator person is. They always have a coordinator person. Whereas we're saying take the coordination off the product owner, make the teams have the coordination, and the product owner is then free to look outward more because the teams are empowered to do product owner work. Any work you think of, a team member or a product owner should be able to do it. The only time really the product owner becomes the only sole product owner is when they go, this is going live or this is not going on the backlog. And that's it.
But I thought part of the value of having a product owner is that they see the big picture of how all the moving parts are working together.
Right. So into the LeSS approach, everyone has a whole product focus. So I think I had it here. Everyone has a whole product focus. There's a whole product focus. Everyone has a whole product focus under the LeSS approach. There is no one who doesn't have the whole product. Everyone's involved in the product. They know what their work does. Why do less? Yes, maintaining a constant whole product focus is critical in LeSS as customers don't buy part of the product. So that means everyone has the whole product focus. There is no, I'm just doing my databasey bit. Nah. We're in the product doing the product. So that is a difference. So if you want to criticize it, you say developers have to move from I just do my techie thing and sort of see how it relates to nah, I'm with the product. So that means if I got to do doco, if I got to get up and speak to legal, then that's what I got to do. Basically, it's an army of product owners that can also, some of them can code or some of them can do testing or some of them can do this as well. But there is one real product owner. And they get paid the big bucks because their neck is on the block. It's not about capability so much. It's more about responsibility and accountability. Yeah, that's more what it's about. So let us move on to this slide. So the product backlog, LPM backlogs are not Scrum. The product backlog is an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. This quote comes from the Scrum Guide. So it's emergent. It shouldn't be fed into. It should emerge. It is the single source of work undertaken by the Scrum team. So they're not doing any other work that comes from other backlogs where they're hired. They're just one. And that's just Scrum. Lean portfolio management is unlikely to work even with just Scrum, as the Scrum Guide rules require a single source. So here's my bias statement. If you have these hierarchy of backlogs, you can never attain agility, is my biased, arrogant statement. It is impossible because this thing is rigid. You have no flexibility unless you keep ripping it up and starting again, and that'll be chaos and it still won't work in my biased view. Which is why you see in all these agile transformations, they fail because their structure and setup for the actual flow of value of work is wrong. The more lists you have, the more complexity goes up and everything that comes with it. Danger. The LeSS approach, instead of asking the question, how can we do agile at scale in our complex hierarchical bureaucracy, it asks a different and deeper question. How can we simplify the organization and be agile? In other words, you're going to change the organizational structure. We're not slotting it in. You're changing it to change the game. That is the catch. So how would you do that? Well, we have less adoption principles. We go deep and narrow over broad and shallow. We focus the less adoption on one product group, give them all the support they need, ensure they work really well. Kaber.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question around when you mentioned that it's product led. What happens in terms of when we need to do maybe tech debt and or we need to go back to refactor some of the pieces of
fantastic question. Yes. So this is the same as anything else. You have a product backlog. Everything is on the backlog. There are no NFRs or any of this sort of nonsense. A product backlog item is a product backlog item. You put value on it because you've only got one product backlog. And if it's tech debt, then you can justify the value of not doing it. If I don't do it, then the house burns down. Better do it then. So then it goes right to the top of the backlog because it becomes critical. Or it doesn't. You base it on value as you need. Everything on the backlog should be ordered by value. That is how you order a backlog. No fancy WSGIF, all these other RICE or all that sort of stuff where value is sort of hidden away. Literally put value on it and how quick are we getting it? Because remember, we're running in sprints and that could be 20 teams running in one sprint, pushing out value each and every sprint in product increment or multiple product increments. So it's just the same as any other item, and that's just Scrum. Okay, I'm going to move on. Deep and narrow over broad and shallow. Give them all the support they need, ensure they work really well. Top down and bottom up. So you need both and the energy of the people doing the right thing and the support with the organizational power to help them do the right thing. And we need volunteering. We don't want people who don't want to do it doing it because they just get upset and then they don't do it. I would argue that this stuff is pretty standard in any transformation and nothing new, really. But unless you state it, it doesn't really happen. So some examples of initial volunteering, initial product volunteering, initial teams volunteering, team formation volunteering. There's many more when we talk about that. Before you do volunteering, you'll probably need to do training because they need to know what the heck they're volunteering for. Yeah. So component teams versus feature teams. So having one single product backlog is not enough. As we saw, there are these things called component teams. When we talk about component teams, even though you have your nice single backlog, fantastic, with one product owner, that is not enough. The other structural change you need to do is to not do component teams. Before we look at what you should do, we need to see the challenge with component teams. If the product owner has the number one item, fantastic, must have it. Team A picks it up and they do their bit in component A, and then they don't understand any other components because they're siloized. And Team C does their bit. Team C realizes, as you said, there's tech debt, so Team B has to do their bit. And then Team B tells A that you have to do an interfacey bit between them all, and round the loop it goes, right? So cost of delay, and none of that's tracked sometimes. Literally, they just ask them to do it. So it's worse than going through several backlogs. It goes through invisible backlogs. Or worse than that, it doesn't happen and it needs to happen. So it just gets worse and worse. Also, there's a systemic risk here. So we've got item number 1 and we need that to be delivered, must have. If for whatever reason, Team B, who are fantastic, are no longer available. For example, this happened at Barclays where the Kyiv team unfortunately all got conscripted into the war. Team gone. Then what do you do next then? Do you re-recruit? That could take 6 months. A quicker way was within 2 to 3 months, you would take a team member from each of these teams and try and build them back up. But that's still a cost of delay. You still get hammered. So for 2 months, you can't do anything. But I see a lot of organisations have that situation, a systemic risk that they don't really address. You'll also notice that organisations will claim they're customer focused, yet their teams will be named after the platform and architecture. So not really. Despite what you say customer focused, you're really architecture focused, not customer focused, because that's how your teams are set up. With feature teams, the alternative, the less way, is that teams can work on it end to end. They are built from team members from each of the other teams to then build this team. They can work end to end. It might not be so most efficient for utilizing people's time, but it is the most efficient for creating real outcomes because they can deliver end to end. Also, as Team We see challenges of interfacing, they can fix it as they go along, thus helping other teams when they come to it too. And you'll notice they're often not called after the components. They have different names because they're customer focused. Usually, actually, they're called after the product team A, product team B, and so on and so on. Running the scenario again, item number 1 and item number 2 and 3 can now all be delivered in parallel. Should Team Shu be no longer available, for whatever reason, we don't even possibly lose item number 2. We could probably, if we catch it in time, say to Team Wu, can you take that on instead of item number 3? But even if that does happen, we only lose it for 1 sprint. We only lose that item, not months. Not months. So if you're not doing this and you're doing this, then I'm sorry, you've got systemic risk. That's a massive risk. I suppose AI will solve it all for you. This is what I'm told. So, more ancient history. There's a misunderstanding about feature teams. They call them feature factories. That's not the original definition of feature teams. Here it is. Feature teams are about empowerment, accountability, identity, consensus, and balance. Jim McCarthy, who first coined the term feature teams working at Microsoft way back in 1995, in his book, Dynamics of Software Development, and he states it in chapter 7, which literally says, use feature teams. So, LeSS also involves coaching. There is the human side aspect to it. Organizational coaching, where you work with multiple teams and management to improve the organization and its structure. Team coaching works with one or few teams to improve their team working and LeSS practices. It is common for the coach to take on the Scrum Master role across all of this. And technical coaching works with or on a team on their actual code base in order to improve the technical practices, adopt agile development techniques such as simple design, refactoring, unit testing, and all that good stuff. In LeSS, there's less roles and responsibilities. The product owner, similar to Scrum, as there is only one single PO who keeps a product overview by ensuring maximum ROI. That's the whole point. We do want someone to know everything overall as much as they possibly can, and if they can't, they know the person to ask in the teams. Not, I have to ask someone else to ask someone else. And that's if we know. Scrum Master, they teach the Scrum to the organisation and coaches them in their never-ending adoption, can work with 1 to 3 LeSS teams. Teams, the developers, have a shared product, interdependent work, a shared responsibility, a set of working agreements, co-responsibility for managing the outside team relationships. So the teams manage their own outside team relationships with internal distributed leadership. And managers are optional depending on your company size. They see the whole, build capability of the organisation to build great products, to go see, to understand what is really going on in the place of work. All that stuff comes from lean, of course, nothing new. But actually baking it in ensures it happens. So less benefits. Let's go over the benefits. Simple, as it's just like Scrum. Some would argue it's better than Scrum. Promotes descaling to avoid and reduce cost. Adaptable to reducing complexity and risk to survive in today's random world of continuous disruption. Because it's simple, you can adapt it. You just give the teams the work, the teams already exist. Don't take the teams to the work, the teams already exist, you take the work to the teams. Creates a learning organisation structured to stay ahead of the competition. The only way the teams survive in this structure is they learn. They're brutally forced to do it. That is a fair criticism of LeSS if your teams don't like learning. And it's customer-centric over delivery-driven, because it is about the customer and the product. So, to sum up, simplicity, the art of maximising the amount of scaling not done, is essentially doing less. Yes, just like the manifesto. I'm running my Certified LeSS Basics course. It's the last one because they're retiring the Certified LeSS Basics, but you still get the cert and it's for life, and they're going to the 3-day course. This is the last time you'll be able to use this one online. It's there for you if you want to. Just plug in it because it's the last one, and then they'll be doing 3-day courses. Last chance you get a 1-day course. That's up to you. And that is the end. I believe I'm on time and I've answered all questions so far, Helen.